Selecting materials for your next project, we offer exceptional quality, standout designs, and expert guidance you can trust. Visit our showroom in Kingston or Traxall, or explore our full range online at www.creativebuildingfinishes.com. Creative Building Finishes, your beautiful finish begins here.
So some of you have been listening longer than I've been talking on radio, so this is our way of keeping it strong together. Join the nationwide 90 FM Family Club on Patreon and stay with us. From the biggest tracks to the biggest energy, Nationwide keeps it moving. If you love the vibes, come and lock in with us for real.
World boss, leave a prison could stop me.
Join the Nationwide 90 FM Family Club today on Patreon.
Practice. God me say you watch you over me practice.
The news cycle doesn't end on Friday. It needs perspective. That's why every Sunday at midday, Nationwide 90 FM presents The Week That Was. A clear, informed review of the top stories that shaped the past week. What really mattered and what lies ahead. No noise, no theatrics, just analysis, context, and clarity. The Week That Was. Sundays at 12 p.m. Understand the news before the week begins. Only on Nationwide 90 FM, a new revolution in media.
It's 2 minutes after 12 o'clock. 2 minutes after 12 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us again another Sunday on The Week That Was, where we review the major stories that shaped the past week and take an informed look at what lies ahead. If you want to understand the news, not just consume it, this is certainly the program for you, and I'm your host, Saeed Bernard. Joining me today with analysis on the major stories of the week are veteran journalist Durant Pate and blogger and environmental activist Emma Lewis. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, afternoon.
Good. My pleasure to have you here. Well, now the law, politics and governance dominated last week's news cycle. And as we hear from Mahira Stewart, these 4 stories stood out in the week that was.
The public getting the opportunity to watch the sentencing of former parliamentarian Jolian Silveira comes in at number 4. Presiding Judge Chief Justice Brian Sykes announced on Thursday that his sentencing proceedings will be live streamed.
Regarding the Jolian Silveira case, that will be a live stream sentencing. And why then? Because we are now at the point where it is just the sentencing that is left, and that process, it is easier to manage at this point than with the proceedings leading up to the entering of the plea of guilty.
At number 3 is Bank of Jamaica Governor Richard Byles criticizing commercial banks for what he describes as weak support for the rollout of the country's central bank digital currency, Jamdex. Speaking at a recent quarterly media briefing, Byles said banks have been given ample opportunity and support to prepare their systems, including upgrading point-of-sale machines, but have made little progress since Jamdex was introduced in 2022. He argued that the slow uptake is hindering Jamaica's transition to a digital economy despite potential benefits to the banking sector, and urged financial institutions to stop obstructing the implementation of the digital currency. Coming in second is National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang, accusing civil society organizations, including Jamaicans for Justice, of living off blood money. Dr. Chang says the groups are pushing a false narrative that the security forces are wantonly killing members of the public.
The people in Jamaica for Justice all years must stop this. They're living off blood money.
JFJ says the comment is unfortunate, untrue, and inflammatory. it's seeking legal advice on the matter. The National Integrity Action, NIA, has defended JFJ against the criticism by Dr. Chang. Its principal director, Dr. Gavin Myers, says the minister should apologize for the comment, which it says is an attack on civil society's right to comment on public issues. And the opposition says the comment was reckless and deeply unbecoming of the minister charged with oversight of the nation's security architecture. Fitz-Jackson is urging the minister to walk back his words. A group of church leaders calling themselves the Watchman Church Leaders Alliance has also called on Dr. Chang to retract his statement. And topping the list of major news stories this week is U.S. Congressman Carlos Jimenez's threat to Jamaica following Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness's comments about the U.S.'s continued economic action against Cuba at the 50th regular CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis last week. Holness, who is also the outgoing chairman of CARICOM, declared that the crisis, energy shortages, and growing humanitarian challenges being experienced in Cuba cannot be ignored. An executive order by U.S. President Donald Trump has targeted any nation providing oil to Cuba with the threat of punitive measures. Several former CARICOM leaders have condemned the action as economic warfare, calling for it to be rescinded. But rather than join in an outright condemnation, Holness called for smart diplomacy and collective action to assist the Cuban people. But writing on X, Congressman Jimenez accused Jamaica of covering up for the Cuban dictatorship. He said Jamaica will face the consequences. Will we?
So you just heard the top 4 stories coming out of last week, and what a week that was. Yes. You know, what a week that was. So let me come to you, Durant and Emma. First of all, let me start with you, Emma. What was your reaction to the top 4 news stories?
Okay, the number one story about the Representative Jimenez, I think, is a bit of a non-story. Personally, I don't think anything's going to come of it.
Yeah.
These people get on X or Twitter and just randomly off the top of their head say something, but he's the only Cuban-born representative in the U.S. government at the moment, elected representative. And so he comes from a different place, I think, and maybe he was just in a bad mood or something. But I don't think we need to worry about it personally.
No, certainly not after seeing the conversation that was had with Marco Rubio thereafter.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
certainly.
yes.
Certainly. And you, Durant?
Well, it was a busy news week.
Yes.
And even though the week has passed, the main news now today is the war in Iran.
Yes.
And it smacks of fear that we might have a similar situation with Cuba, considering what happened in Venezuela, still on our doorsteps.
In January, Venezuela, the Venezuelan president, he was taken from, I mean, they say arrested, I say kidnapped.
Yes.
So to be safe, he was taken,
Yes.
and he's now in New York in a federal facility. In February, they gave intelligence to the Mexican authority. They took out El Mencho, and again, just now, the start of March, basically yesterday, the Iranian supreme leader has been taken out, and people are now saying, as you rightly said, well, who is next? Because they seem to be on a roll and they're not stopping. They seem to be continuing. And a lot of people have been asking, where's the United Nations in all of
And
this?
let us also emphasize that the United States took a very active role in Iran.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So it's not like they
they've
were
been
just
building up.
a passing
Right.
participant. They
Exactly.
were active.
Oh, yeah.
Active. Them and Israel. Yeah. Okay, so those are big news stories actually coming out of last week. And one of them is about the story, a story about what is happening this week. The Chief Justice of Jamaica, Chief Justice Brian Sykes, he said that there will be the streaming of the sentencing for Julian Silveira. Want your view on this? Is this a good move or not?
I think so, definitely.
Why?
I think it will sort of placate a little bit the general public who were, and myself as well, who were disappointed that, the gun court was closed. It was all done in
camera, yes.
So at least this will open things up a little bit. But having said that, at this point, I don't think there's much. It will make much difference because it's just the sentencing, and we know he'll probably get a. Well, we don't know, but he will be sentenced for manslaughter, and I don't know whether it will be very informative for the public.
It might
but
very well
it might
be.
be.
Let me see what Durant has to say on this.
It is very important, and it's also it allows. First of all, the gun court cases are in camera, so they are not subjected to public scrutiny.
You're on the gun court. I also want you to tell me, is this the perfect opportunity to bring up the point that that section in the gun court actually be repealed?
But the Chief Justice has somewhat said it, that it's time for the journalists, the advocate, the policy makers to now look at the Gun Court Act, because the Gun Court Act emanated in a period where there was heightened fear of witnesses giving testimony because they do not want to be giving testimony in open court. Therefore, the Gun Court Act came into being to allow in-camera trial. Now, that sort of situation doesn't exist anymore. You have technology where you don't have to be giving testimony in open court. You have video screening. You have other means. You can distort the voice. So, yes, with the passage of time, the Gun Court Act has become irrelevant, and yes, it's time for
that section in the Gun Court Act has become irrelevant.
But there are other aspects.
There are other aspects, I'm sure.
And that was back in the 70s.
Yes,
it was.
Yeah.
And I'll say as much. Many attorneys, senior at the bar, and even myself, not senior at the bar, but I share the view with them as well. If it were up to us, we think certain things should be televised. You should be able to go on your YouTube and say, okay, let me see what's happening in Arthur Court, or let me see what's happening in this trial in the Supreme Court, and watch it. Just to give that access to justice. And that's where I want to bring the conversation. Do you think something like this, we've seen it before, the live streaming of cases in the Court of Appeal. We've seen it when they had all judges of the Court of Appeal, I think it was 9 of them at the time, sitting to hear a matter that was live streamed. The cartel appeal at the Privy Council, live streamed. Here, when it was sent back here, live streamed. Is this an indication that is where we should be going with our matters?
I would say yes, and I would also add, my recollection is that the technology exists, the equipment is there. There's a program that the Canadian finance, it's called JUST, whereby these sort of technologies were provided to the government of Jamaica, and I had a matter in the resident magistrate court that I actually saw some of these technology. No, we need to put them to work. That's what we need to do.
Yes,
indeed. I would totally agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, and so switching gears now from the law, which dominated when Chief Justice said that, it made the news immediately. Jamdex. The Bank of Jamaica and its governor, Richard Biles, he basically chided the commercial banks to say that they were given every opportunity to prepare for Jamdex. He is resisting the commercial banks' resistance to Jamdex. What do you make of that, Emma?
Well, many countries are moving towards a cashless society now. And again, the technology, as Durant was referring to, is there. We could do it if, we don't need to be reluctant about it. In the UK, I was trying to pay my son for something in cash, and he said, "No, Mom, I don't want that. I can't use it." He doesn't use cash at all, ever. But as far as central banks are concerned, there's several countries that do have a central bank digital currency, including the Bahamas. So perhaps we could learn from them. They have something called the sand dollar, which is kind of a nice name. But I think it's a way to go, and I understand that the banks are saying that it's going to cost them a lot. And I wonder where that cost is going to go from. Are they going to lose some fees or some of these fees that they charge? Are they going to lose there?
But what the governor of BOJ is saying, and coming to you, Durant, on this point, is that, but this is also beneficial for the banks themselves. They're saying that it's a high implementation cost, but it also benefits them. For example, and the easiest low-hanging fruit example is that you have to pay a lot to move cash,
Yeah.
to store cash. The
Yes.
banks have to pay to you
Yes,
send
of
cash
course,
to
of
the,
course,
the,
yeah.
the reserve and all of that. It could amount to less for them. What do you make on that, Duran?
Well, first, I was there. The governor was just frustrated.
Yes.
It's like there have been complaints, and I've been pressing the governor on the whole issue of interest rate not coming down in tandem with the BOJ.
Indeed.
You
Right.
have the frequent downtime of ABM machines.
Oh, yes.
Right? And actually, the response from the governor wasn't even a question to him. It was a question to the deputy governor, but he felt so frustrated
strongly
that he had
about
to
it.
chime in and offering a response. Now, the governor went on even further to say that the BOJ has said to the banking community, we will pay half of your costs.
The
to have-
implementation cost.
Yes. One of the problem is that what the governor said, that there is the POS system that you can.
Has
Yes,
to
that's
be
the one. That's the,
adjusted.
so the
Yeah.
POS system. He's saying that you need to adjust the system so you
Yes.
can accept
Yeah.
the Jamdex.
Yes, yes.
So if you have the Jamdex on your mobile device and you go to the supermarket, you can click and use your Jamdex
Exactly.
on the POS
Right.
machine.
No, I can tell you this much.
Yes.
I subscribe to Jamdex. I
Okay.
think we were
Oh, you do? That's
given
good.
Talk to me, Duran. Give me the
2005.
insights.
That's good.
Yeah.
No. I just subscribe, but I'm just trying to make the point or
Yes.
the concern. When it was initially launched, each subscribers were given $2,500.
Yes.
Now, I don't know how to access this
The $2,500.
$2,500 because what I would want and what the governor was saying, that just make it accessible to a POS system. So
Right.
I get my
You just
phone,
go, click,
I
tap.
just swipe, and there is a debit from that $2,500.
And you know
But
what's
the banks are resisting.
And you know what's a bigger point on this? Do you think they're resisting because it is also a way for them to not get as much fees? And let me give you the
Yes,
example.
that's
When
what
you
I
receive
understand.
money, they charge you RTGS fees
That's
with
what I was
GCT thereon.
guessing.
When you send money, they charge you RTGS with fees thereon. But with Jamdex, you get the money instantly, no fees.
Let me just add, when you withdraw, you are also
Indeed.
taxed. Well, not
Yeah.
taxed, but you're also imposed a fee.
Indeed.
I think part the underlying, I've always felt that Jamaican commercial banks are very conservative in their thinking. They're very slow to think about changes like this, although they're very quick to put up their fees.
Yeah. I should ask this question though,
But
and
they're conservative.
and I'm being cautious. I don't want to cause unnecessary controversy. But should the Bank of Jamaica Act be so amended to give them teeth to not urge and ask banks to do particular things, but to mandate them to do particular things? At the end of the day, and my reasoning for it is, at the end of the day, their license is under the Bank of Jamaica. Now, if I am giving you a license, I should be able to tell you the parameters under which you operate. Should we go there with our central bank? Give them that autonomy to mandate to banks to say, this is what you must do, this is what is required, or else.
I have put that question to the governor time after time after time. The response is, we operate in a free market economy.
Yeah.
Companies, banks, etc., are allowed to operate within certain narrow parameters. So I've said that, but let me put it out there. The banking community that we have in Jamaica are just rapacious as it comes to customer. They just impose. They are not customer centric. They don't look at how it's going to impact on their customers. They just look on the bottom line. And let me just publicly declare,
Yes.
I have a little portfolio, and banking assets are among those. So
Yes.
I'm speaking from both
As a shareholder and as a customer.
and as a customer.
I think that's balanced enough. And I want one comment from each of you on our third story. The Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, National Security and Peace Minister Horace Chang says that a particular NGO was thriving off blood money. What's your reaction to that? Do you agree with him? Not? What's your view?
Well, apart from the fact that it's very inflammatory language and quite unnecessarily so, I think. It's not fair. I mean, whose blood money are they talking about? At the moment, JFJ is doing a program which is funded by the European Union. Are the European Union giving them blood money? I don't think so. The United Nations and many other highly respectable institutions. So I don't really... I think I know what he's referring to, but I think it's grossly unfair and grossly inappropriate.
Durant?
I think it was uncharacteristic of the minister in the posture that he displayed. That's one. Two, I don't think much thought went into the pronouncement. Three, I think the minister needs to assess how he couches words. Blood money has a particular definition, and the definition is not, well, doesn't apply, put it that way.
Yeah.
So he needs, but what I'm appalled at, and I am concerned, the statement is demanding an apology, an explanation, or a clarification. And I see the youth arm of the governing party supporting the minister. I am appalled at that. Something that is clearly wrong. You need to step and say, no, this is not what the minister meant. He actually meant this, but it come across the wrong way. But I'm seeing them justifying this, and I shudder to think that this is the upcoming generation of legislators, of political leaders we are going to foist on the country.
No pun intended, but I believe the young
Jamaica.
It wasn't Young Jamaica. It was Generation 2K.
Sure,
that was the
Young
one of them.
Jamaica.
It was Young
No,
Jamaica.
it was Young Jamaica.
It was
Yeah.
Young
Young
Jamaica.
Jamaica.
So Young Jamaica was the one that made a pronouncement, I believe, in support of the Minister of National Security.
And let me just say, and to be fair,
I have to wrap. So we're going to come back to it. Because you get to choose your winners and losers of the week. He might be able to do that. But that was our week in review. As you can see, very robust discussions on the top stories that was in the week that was. And of course, up next, we will go into a particular story, the movers and shakers, CARICOM on US-Cuba relations. Stay tuned.
If you love the vibes, the laughs, and the real talk, then you're one of us. Don't just listen, belong. Join the Nationwide 90 FM Family Club on Patreon.
You may have been hearing the teasers. Now it's official. Beginning Monday, February 9, 2026, Nationwide News Network launches something special. The Nationwide Family Club, exclusively on Patreon.
With the Family Club, members get early access to our documentaries before anyone else. Some of your favorite segments, including Cliff Says, What's on My Mind, Cover Story, and others, will now be a click away inside the Family Club. There are 3 tiers of membership. First, Bronze, the Family Insider, behind-the-scenes access, Monday motivational videos, members-only chats, and on-air birthdays and anniversary shoutouts.
Second, Silver, Nationwide VIP. Breaking news alerts, exclusive documentaries, quizzes, personal milestones celebrated on air, and weekly family roll call mentions. Oh, and for our biggest supporters,
our gold category, elite listener, full archive access, early releases, private studio tours, live show experiences, personalized birthday videos, and exclusive live streams. From historic election coverage to lifetime, impact, Jamaican milestones, and rare archive content. This is Nationwide like you've never seen it before. The Nationwide Family Club, coming to you February 9, 2026 on Patreon.
Join the family, support Nationwide 90 FM, the station that informs, entertains, and educates. Visit patreon.com/Nationwide News Network. That's patreon.com/Nationwide News Network. Nationwide Family Club, where you are family, because we see you as family.
Commercial spaces for you. Parks and attractions for you. Housing and residential developments for you. Beautiful rental properties for you. Improving quality of life through infrastructure development across Jamaica for you. The Urban Development Corporation, making development happen for you. Brought to you by the Urban Development Corporation.
UDC for you. Power in great moments. If you have financial needs, Chris and Charles will fix them for you. Power in great moments since 1992. Oh, we have it all. Power in great moments. Relax, you got Chris and Charles. Oh, we have it all. When you think loans, think Chris and Charles.
27 minutes after 12 o'clock. Thank you so much for staying with us. It is the week that was, and of course, we are now in our segment called the Movers and Shakers. Certainly, what the story that we went under that segment was the CARICOM on U.S.-Cuba relations, particularly with what Dr. Holness, our Prime Minister, argued that the severity of the crisis in Cuba cannot be ignored. Certainly, he called for a more pragmatic, humanitarian-focused approach, and he framed those comments as a regional concern of national security, economic instability, and migratory pressures, rather than an ideological challenge to the United States. However, U.S. Congressman for Florida, Carlos Jimenez, publicly warned that Jamaica, and I'll say even threatened, that Jamaica should and will face consequences for Dr. Holness's position on Cuba, raising questions, certainly, about diplomatic pressure and possible sanctions. We spoke about that earlier, and to join us now to give us some insights from an expertise point of view is Associate Professor of Political Science and Global Studies from Governors State University in Illinois, Dr. Nicole Warmington Granston. Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon, Saeed. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. Thanks for having me with you today.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us to give us some insights. Well, tell me first of all, your reaction to what Carlos Jimenez has said in response to Dr. Holness's speech at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting.
Well, when I think about what he said, I kind of have to agree with our former U.S. ambassador to Jamaica, Luis Moreno, when he made that statement that I don't think that the speech that was made by Dr. Holness really needs to have any major sanctions. I don't think I'll go as far as Mr. Moreno to say that it was silly or maybe it was silly suggestions, but I don't think what Holness provided, which we have been saying is a very nuanced diplomatic speech, really needs to be sanctioned in any way.
Yeah, but I want to ask you this question, because the mere fact that a head of government goes and says his view on a particular issue, the conversation now comes about, the U.S., we could sanction you for saying that. In the face of geopolitics, shouldn't a head of government have the right to say what is in the best interest of his country and of his region without such fear?
Yes, I think we should. I understand that it seems that we're in uncharted waters right now when we think about U.S. Caribbean relations. But we have gone through similar times in the past, in the sense that when we're looking at an issue, how it's affecting not just Jamaica but our neighbors, the best way to approach it is to share what's going on, but also understand that we have what we call a large state, small state relationship with the United States. Mm-hmm. And given that, there are certain issues that we should be able to speak about, have direct dialogue with our the U.S. representatives to kind of, as we say, hash out what needs to be handled in the area, right? So I think that's the best way. How we're handling things is the correct way to go.
It is the correct way to go. Well, given the situation, do we have any tools in the toolbox, the diplomatic toolbox, to highlight the situation in Cuba, the humanitarian crisis in Cuba that is unfolding, and say we need to rescue that, but also manage relations with these larger states who have the influence and the economic power through embargoes and sanctions to cripple small island developing states like those of us in the Caribbean?
I think we're actually using the approaches that we can use in this situation very well. The first thing that I saw that I think I mentioned that we did while we were at the meeting was having direct dialogue with U.S. officials, right? The fact that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was there, and then we had the Prime Minister meeting with him, or Foreign Minister in the meeting as well, really to kind of sit there to share and explain our position, because we're looking for the wider regional stability. I think that was the very first step that needed to be done, and we saw it was good, because again, the idea of this is kind of like us, trying to maintain foreign policy that, is driven by our national interest, but the wider regional security. And based on what I heard, it was seen as a positive event where both sides said it was positive, and they indicate that there'll be more bilateral talks about what could be done about the situation.
Indeed. Professor, I have two journalists in studio with me, Durant and Emma. And Durant has a question for you.
Yeah, I would want to hear your thoughts on the fact that, one, I believe it's Canada that has said that it would be providing oil to Cuba. Mexico has said that it will be providing humanitarian.
And it will allow any planes going to Cuba to stop over to refuel.
I do not hear any backlash against those two countries. So why you want to pick on poor little Jamaica? I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, just to answer that, Dr. Blake, that I know you've had Damien Blake in the past, he and I have been working on, what we call strong state, small state relations. And there's two reasons you might find, I don't want to use the word pick, right? But there is literature out there that mentions that when you have a larger strong state versus a smaller state, the relationship could be one of two ways, where it's a bargaining relationship, where you could have this tit for tat, and then at the end you can possibly meet in the middle. Or it could be what we call a dependency model, where there won't be much of a tit for tat, and that whatever the larger state says goes. So far, when we've looked at the Jamaica-US relations, we've seen more of the bargaining model being portrayed in most instances. Yes, because the larger state may have more economic power, other types of power on their side, they may get more of their way in certain situations. But we've seen where in other instances, the small state, especially when we look at it as a collective unit, if we're working from the CARICOM point of view, I've seen where we've actually had more victories when we speak as one unified voice as opposed to like each individual country. So again, it has more to do with the kind of power attached to a larger state, more powerful state, but that doesn't say that we don't have a way of kind of, steering some of the interest in our
dancing through the raindrops. Emma, you had a question.
Yes. Well, on Monday, there was the U.S. again blew another fishing boat out of the water, and 3 people were killed in the Caribbean, and the total is about 150 people have died in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. I don't know, that I guess the politicians would have wanted to be diplomatic, perhaps. Do you think this came up in the discussions with Marco Rubio, this issue? I mean, surely they said it was frank conversations. Is this kind of totally illegal action? Do you think they brought that up? I mean, it wasn't mentioned in
I know
any
it may
of
not have
the-
been mentioned, but most likely it would have been brought up, because we've seen that one of the, one of the points that Professor Holness has been Prime Minister Holness has been really pushing, has been pushing is this idea that he wants that the region maintains this zone of peace, right? That he's really pushing to encourage US to seek more diplomatic solutions instead of exacerbating any humanitarian crisis, both right here in the US, and we've heard him previously mention it when it came to the Venezuela issue. Indeed. And when it comes to the bombing of boats. So I think it may have come back up again. I'm not sure what the outcome of that discussion was like, but I'm sure it definitely came back up.
But in 30 seconds, Professor, my last question to you. How do we go forward? How do we chart going forward? Because certainly this sets a precedent.
In charting how things go, when we're thinking about navigating stuff, I think I mentioned the very first thing that we did. We started with that direct line with the officials. The next one, as I mentioned, is that we need to be advocating more for a united voice, because collectively we tend to do much better in dealing with these particular issues. I think the third thing definitely is promoting more constructive dialogue over confrontation. Like we've seen where Dr. Holness has actually urged Washington and Havana to really, have this dialogue, de-escalate, reform, look forward for stability. Because again, we know rationale is that if there's a humanitarian crisis that's in Cuba,